In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 67. Andrew and Jerry finally fire Fauci. I am Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers.
And listen, it's been a bit. We're so glad you could join us, Jerry and I. Jerry was on vacation. I was hosting on WMAL. Jerry's got his new podcast. In fact, Jerry, let's tee it up there. I think we mentioned it, but tell us all about your podcast.
Well, it's the Business of America. The Jerry Rogers hosts the Business of America on the Federal News Wire. I have joined Langer and his podcast at the Federal News Wire.
And the day is mine.
And it's going to be a focus on the economy, on innovation, on capitalism, on small business, on Wall Street, you name it, the Business of America. So we're going to be talking to CEOs, small business owners, experts who can tell us how to grow the economy, increase wages, increase wealth. A healthier, wealthier America is what's on the menu.
I love it. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to the first episode when that drops. And I appreciate I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit. I appreciate Jerry talking about that for a minute because it allowed me to double check to make sure I was using the right microphone. Because last time we did a show, I used the wrong mic, which was a problem. Anyway, so I want you all to set your Wayback Machine back 3.5 years ago, back to the spring of 2020. We are in the middle of the pandemic. Jerry and I, at that point, were still doing the Langer cast. And we were starting to go over, we were all engrossed in numbers. And at that point, Jerry was just the head. I don't mean just, but I mean, he hadn't taken on the mantle of being both the editor of Real Clear Policy and Real Clear Books and Real Clear Culture. He was at that point solely the editor of Real Clear Health and thus a great expert in what was going on with talk about the pandemic. And Jerry referenced, I don't remember when the first time you referenced it, Jerry, but we came in for, I wouldn't say great criticism, but we certainly came in for social media censorship. In fact, I think we had a whole episode pulled from a certain video platform in which you dared to suggest that there was limited utility in wearing masks, certainly great non-utility in mask mandates. And in the end, you were correct. And there have been study after study. Anthony Fauci, who for some reason is still, by the way, we've said Andrew and Jerry finally fire Fauci. Jerry wanted to call it something entirely different. but Jerry, Fauci goes on the TV talk shows and he says something. The CNN host points out, rightly so, that there has been this great study showing that masks don't work. And we can talk about the other studies that talk about the harm that masks can do. But Fauci says, well, yes, that's true in the general sense, but on the individual case level, masks help. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I'm thinking, is he talking anecdotally? Because it seems to me that the general should apply to the specific, that if at a general level masks don't work, then it makes no sense to say that it works on a specific level. Can you talk about this?
Well, I mean, a couple of things, right? I mean, number one, it's difficult for the left in particular, but the establishment more broadly, to give up on this idea that we know better, that we're in control. Listen to us. We're the experts. Don't worry, we've arrived. And he still has some of that, right? He is still displaying that hubris. But here's the thing. I actually cut him a little bit of slack. And what I mean by that is this.
Shame on you.
Masks generally, in every study that actually studies the efficacy of masks, has come back saying that they did nothing to stop the spread of COVID. And you alluded to this already. In fact, some science, we're now finding out that masks did harm, did psychological harm, developmental harm to students. There were respiratory issues,
right,
in terms of the overuse of masks. But here's the thing. It is clear. It's not debatable. It's not the Jerry Rogers, Andrew Langer opinion that masks and mask mandates don't work. It is science. It is fact. It is the truth. But yet you still have those for whom politics is religion, and these things are like sacraments. So lockdowns, mandates vis-a-vis COVID, as well as the other sacraments of the left, the climate change. We just saw data released this week that it looks like up towards 90% of so-called warming, global warming, is caused by solar activity.
Right.
And that the ground temperatures, we know that from the data. My point in mentioning climate change is that climate change and COVID are very similar in terms of how the government, how the politicians push an agenda. But let me say this.
But hold on. Before you say that, how governments push an agenda, but also that it's an article of faith. As you said, the masks are a sacrament. Absolutely. Acceptance of man-made climate change is a sacrament. It is an element of faith of the left. Go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry.
And so anyway, the slack that I give to Fauci is this. Cloth masks, paper masks, even surgical masks, all of these masks, none of them work. In fact, I was with my doctor not long ago before they lifted the mask mandates in the late winter of 2023. Yes. That's when the mask mandates for many office spaces in at least liberal states like Maryland, D.C. area, mask mandates were lifted. But anyway, I was in the doctor's office with my doctor, and he's wearing a mask.
Yes.
He was double masked. And I said, Doc, what are you doing? This isn't stopping the flu or respiratory virus or COVID. And he says, I know. I said, well, what's the story then? He said, it's mandated, so therefore I must. And second, it makes other people feel good.
Right. That's the thing. That's exactly where I was going to make some of my patients feel more comfortable if I wear a mask.
So this is a short story long.
Of course, hold on. Of course, forgetting that it makes a certain percentage of his patients think that he's an idiot. But go ahead.
Well, that's what I said to him. I said, hey, why should I believe you about my cholesterol, about my blood sugar, or any other issue if you're sitting there talking to me, I can't breathe through 2 masks.
Yes.
And he giggled and called me obese, and then we went on. But anyway, but here's the slack for Fauci, and that is N95 masks with filtration, ventilator masks. Yes, they do work on an individual basis to stop the spread of a virus. We know this is true. The problem with the N95 is that it has to be worn according to specs.
Right.
And nobody does that. And it has to be replaced out, and nobody does that. And a ventilator mask is, quite frankly, we can't have our kids walking through school looking like they are, invaders from the future. So yes, if you want to walk around with a ventilator mask, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
you can protect yourself from COVID, but it's not practical. You can't live this way.
Right.
And maybe that's what he meant, was that, maybe if you're very smart and you're a doctor and you're a scientist and you wear an N95 and you replace it every 14 hours or whatever the specs are, yes, then there is an individual efficacy.
I cut him no slack.
But you see, but you get my point, though, right?
Right. And because I'm going to get in a whole nother story here, I'm going to remind everybody.
But actually, well, Andrew, though, that makes our point, and that is that mandates don't work.
Right. Well,
period.
Yes, of course. But my point is, in the end, he's not saying this because he's talking about N95 and he's sort of conflating two things. Maybe he's conflating two things, but it's also that Fauci cannot admit that he's wrong, because if he admits he's wrong, he's fallible. If he admits he's fallible, then he's going to lose some of that adoration that he gets from his worshipers. And I don't use that term loosely. I don't say it to I don't exaggerate to make a point. There are people who created votive candles with
Yes.
Anthony Fauci's face on it, and not as a joke, right? Not So
pillows with
bobbleheads.
his
Yes. I mean, all of these things, and the reality is, right. Actually, I say this: any other Republican president might have fired Fauci when they came into office. I'm not so sure that Donald Trump would have fired Fauci. But
time out. Stop there for a second. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Trump's revisionism. Remember, and again, for our friends who are Trump supporters, the fact of the matter is that Trump allowed for the lockdown culture, the lockdown protocols to take effect. He should have realized that this was an attempt by the media and the establishment to hurt his 2000 election chances, and of course that's what it was. He had every opportunity to fire Fauci. Right. Fauci was a Trump appointee in the sense that Trump put him in charge. Trump gave him responsibility. Trump put him at the dais in terms of those ridiculous press conferences. And so my question to those who still support Donald Trump, why after COVID?
And they're going to come back and they'll say, well, Trump he didn't have the expertise and he wasn't being well advised. And I come back and I say,
who were his advisors?
This is my point.
Were Fauci.
Exactly. No. But also, nobody around him. And this is the problem, right?
And this is, by the way, and this is why Mike Pence is disqualified, because Pence was in charge of the COVID task force, and Pence left Birx, Fauci, and the rest of these folks, Francis, on and on. He left them all in charge.
And that may be the problem with Pence being, part of the establishment at, sort of deferring in that regard. And there was nobody else around Trump to say, this is bad, this is wrong, this is hurting you. And by example, again, I know I've said this before on the air, you and I, Jerry, our camp, I specifically reached out to somebody within Trump's inner circle to say, and I don't want to take full credit for this.
I know the mask thing. This is funny.
The mask thing. My point is that we gave Trump a suggestion based upon something one of my listeners had said, which was brilliant, that you take the mask off the table if Donald Trump starts printing a bunch of Make America Great Again masks in red and white and blue and white Trump 2020 masks, and he starts wearing masks to promote his campaign for re-election.
Mask mandates go away.
The mask issue goes away,
yeah.
But they didn't do that, and in fact, I got unfriended on social media.
Well, what's crazy is University of Michigan and other colleges are beginning to put mask mandates into effect.
Montgomery County, yeah. Sorry, you were
Montgomery County, Maryland, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., also putting mask mandates. Again, it makes no scientific sense. And again, I think in Montgomery County, I think it's the teacher unions. This is another thing too, is powerful interests leverage COVID for their own benefit. And this is why the teacher unions nationwide wanted lockdowns. Why? Because they wanted more money, more spending. They wanted hazard pay. They wanted more benefits. Again, I thought of this today. Yesterday
and Jerry, time out, and they wanted to be able to shut parents further out of the process.
Exactly right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but you're right. And this is more evidence that that public schools, government schools, again, if you're able to homeschool or do homeschooling pods or private school, the public school system in this country is beyond broken. It's dangerous. And I said this, and I got in trouble a couple of times. Got called into the program director's office.
You got called into the principal's office, Jerry, for speaking out in class
on my radio show at WBAL. I would say very clearly, no ambiguity, no exaggeration to make a point. But the fact of the matter is, the teacher unions, the public school system, engaged in child abuse. The lockdowns, the mask mandates was child abuse.
We are seeing the end result of that, which is why, right? Because I want to go here and talk about how you think this is going to play out, right? We know, yet again, more news this week about developmental disabilities. Disabilities isn't the right word. Developmental shortchanging.
Yes. Listen, Andrew, there have been tests now on adolescents who went through the masking protocols, and their brain development is such that it resembles children, adolescents who were abused.
Right.
And that's why when I say the public education system and the teachers unions engaged in child abuse, I am being literal there. And I'm not being political.
College campuses are seeing this as well, right? Again, we talk about examples of how this plays out. The longer college students were held in lockdown in high school, maybe even earlier. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think anybody who's in college now was in high school during the lockdowns. But the longer they were in lockdowns in high school, the worse off their developmental abilities were.
Absolutely.
To college. Yes. So, by example, we know somebody whose child went off to college. Their roommate had pre-existing sort of mental health conditions, OCD and some other things, but they were completely exacerbated. So when the kids got to college, they couldn't deal with each other. They didn't have the interpersonal skills. They were all sort of
because you
locked in the room by themselves.
You add the COVID lockdowns and the masking, the mandates, and you add that to a generation that has been raised on TikTok and social media, right? This is a distracted, disconnected generation that then was forced to be locked down for a number of years. It wasn't weeks, it was years.
I'm going to digress for a moment and say I started watching yesterday this Adam Sandler movie on Netflix. I'm not going to invite you to my bat mitzvah, and I can't watch it not because not because I don't find it funny or I don't think it's well made, but because I don't get the references.
Oh no,
because it's all anyway. It's all about kids and anyway. I can't watch it. So, but Jerry, this is where I want to go here, because we're seeing the soft re-implementation of these mask mandates. And what I mean by that is we're seeing it in places like Montgomery County. We're seeing it on college campuses. I'm starting to see people out in America starting, generally in the general public wearing masks. How does America react if, right? Remember, Fauci sort of did all of this kind of verbal gymnastics. I don't mandate lockdowns, blah, blah, blah. We make recommendations, and states and localities, they accept our recommendations. They can do what they want with them, which we know isn't true, but set that aside. How does the average American react if they try to re-implement mask mandates? I know I'm not going to comply. Or on the vaccine side of it, we saw people over the weekend who were all over. My wife had a phone call with somebody over the weekend who is like, well, I'm just waiting for this new vaccine to come out so I can go and get the new vaccine. Does America take it like sheep again going into 2024? Or is there greater reluctance and resistance given what we now understand? Is there a mass exodus from public schools if they go into lockdowns again? What happens? What do you think?
Well, look, I think to answer your question directly, I think Americans will comply by and large.
Yeah.
Americans will simply comply. Why? Because if you're ordered to if you're ordered to be vaccinated and wear a mask in order to go to university, there aren't a lot of parents who can invest that kind of resources into their child's education than just to say, well, we're gonna disenroll you. If you're working for one of the big corporations and mask mandates or vax mandates become part of the protocol, what are you going to do? Quit your job? And I think half. I exaggerate, but we have this idea where half America is progressive or progressive leaning, half is freedom or freedom leaning. The fact of the matter is that a lot of Americans will wear the mask and get the vax because it's a virtue. It's a good thing. They're moral people. Again, it goes back to the question of religion, where this is their faith, and they're good. It's like wearing your ashes.
This is the problem
for a Catholic on Ash Wednesday. When I was a kid, I'd get my ashes and I'd be proud that day. that I was Catholic, and people, and I was identified as Catholic. I think those,
and I'd wonder why do people have smudges on their foreheads? I don't understand.
But the point is that there are going to be people who are going to wear their mask as a sign of I'm part of this tribe.
Right. There's a third of America that will certainly do that. I think that's true. This is the problem, and I think you are correct in this, and it's a sad state of affairs, because it's not that there are people who want to, but they are sort of, and this is how totalitarianism takes shape. Right? You had many people in the Soviet Union who hated the Soviet government, but because the Soviet government exercised total control over their ability to live their lives, they could not. There was nothing that they could do.
You use this phrase that you borrowed from somewhere else, where you will be made to care.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
no,
I
we
think
came up with it, and then I discovered that somebody else had.
All right.
Somebody else had.
So
that title,
when we were talking about LGBTQ plus issues and other such issues, we're part of the Leave Us Alone coalition. Live your life, let me live my life. Don't force your ideology on me. However, as you rightly said, the way our culture is, the way our politics is, you will be made to care.
Right.
Now, let's take that to the next step. You will be made to comply.
That's exactly it, and it comes down to. Now, I was concerned it took an extra year before parents were really demanding that their kids go back to school, right? I thought that by the summer of 2020, parents are going to be so sick of their kids being home, they'd be like, come September, that's it. You're going back to school, forget it. It took another year for that to happen. End of the summer of 2021. But what Jerry points out is accurate. I think that there is a greater percentage of the population that would be more willing to resist a mask mandate, and I think they will be more vocal about their resistance to
listen,
hold on, Jerry, let me finish my thought. But when push comes to shove, because there is this, oh my God, at the intersection of, we all know, I'm not going to say it, but we all know what the intersection of corporatism and politics is, or corporatism and government is, in terms of the form of government that is. But because there is this incredible intersection of government power and corporate power that has a huge dominion over individual activities, daily activities, even if you want to resist, it's going to become impossible for you to do so, because you will be unable to participate. Anyway, I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
It's not an accident, Andrew, that the progressives, the mainstream media, have gone after the January 6th trespassers, right? Those who mobbed the Capitol. And again, you and I have been perfectly clear our position here, and that is, in a democracy, in a free culture, a free society, the mob is dangerous,
right? And
so therefore, if there were people guilty of mob rioting or trespass, they should be punished. However, what has happened is outrageous. There are people who have been in jail now for over 2 years, going on 3 years. There are some we know from some reporting that some of these prisoners have been held in solitary confinement. They've been denied access to their attorneys. We just saw the so-called the Proud Boys, this organization, the Proud Boys. Its 3 members getting 17 years in jail, 22 years in jail, and there are people applauding this. This is terror. This is government, the Department of Justice, political terrorism, in the sense that you want to know why people will comply? Because they don't want to go to jail.
Right.
They don't want to be locked up. Right. I often think about this.
This is Lavrenti Beria style tactics. Sorry, go ahead.
I often think about this, Andrew. And again, before, it's not just the J6, right? It's if there's the Free Press yesterday put out a piece by a scientist who admitted that he changed his scientific findings vis-a-vis climate change because he didn't want to get canceled.
Right.
And so the political pressure is such that it impacts our science, it impacts our justice system. Look at these.
Hold on, time out for a second. I just want to look at I want to come back to what you said. Look at these. So stick a pin in that. You had 2, because you just referenced this issue of solar radiative cycles. and how they impact climate. And the two of the greatest scientific minds on this were folks at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Sally Bal-Yunis and Willie Soon. Both Sally Bal-Yunis and Willie Soon were driven from the scientific world by the left because they dared question the orthodoxy about man-made climate change. I think Sally Bal-Yunis is now like a golden retriever breeder somewhere. I don't know what Willie Soon is doing, but the point is people get hounded from their jobs. You were about to say something, Jerry, and I rudely...
Well, I mean, again, these things are connected. Right. So you have the climate change issue where people are canceled, thrown out of their livelihood. You have the Trump indictments. Again, you might hate Donald Trump, and that's fine. I don't care. I'm not going to support this guy. I hope he doesn't get the Republican nomination. But the fact of the matter is, these indictments, these 91 counts, these 4 indictments, this is political terrorism. This is judicial terrorism. This is not about Donald Trump. It's about you and keeping your forcing you to keep your mouth shut. And again, Andrew, it's not just that, right? I mean, there's a big story over at Reason that there was a person who was arrested for making a COVID joke on Twitter in America.
Right.
And so again, this idea, this cancel culture, this attack on free speech, the rise of diversity, equity, and inclusion officers in the military, in corporations, in governments. I mean, my goodness, you look at city. Yes.
Sorry, the White House is attacked in the early summer of 2020. The White House is attacked. There's a riot. People are breaching barricades. The park police are being attacked. There are people trying to breach the White House fence while the president of the United States is inside the White House. That riot is protected speech, according to the left, not insurrection, but people engaging in these things. I want to point out something real quick, Jerry, a little bit of a history lesson. Let's not forget that both the United States Capitol and the Pentagon were bombed by a domestic terror organization, the Weather Underground, right? Who were members of the Weather Underground? Oh, I don't know. One of the parents of the former prosecutor of San Francisco, Chesa Boudin's parent, was a member of the Weather Underground. And Barack Obama's political patrons, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, members of the Weather Underground. And so in 50 years, we've gone from the Weather Underground bombing the Capitol, bombing the Pentagon. I don't think members of the Weather Underground were charged with seditious conspiracy or a conspiracy to engage in an insurrection, yet they bombed these buildings, these federal government buildings. And the folks who were involved are the ones informing the current generation of folks involved in both law enforcement and political power. And so to me, there's no great mystery in how law enforcement and politics can be weaponized. I used to say that the great failure of the 60s was that they didn't look at the abuses of power of the Johnson administration and the Nixon administration and turn around and remove that power. And it wasn't a failure. I mean, it was a failure if that was their concern, but they knew in the end that they could take that government power and use it to punish their enemies. And here we are a half century later, and that's exactly what they're doing.
And again, climate change, Trump indictments, the J6 insurrection hoax. Again, not saying it wasn't a riot, it was, but the fact is this wasn't an insurrection. We just heard news that a number of pro-life advocates have been prosecuted, indicted, prosecuted, and convicted of essentially praying outside abortion clinics.
Right.
And then again, the whole COVID lockdowns and look,
Jerry, can we ping on the pro-life?
Yeah, but again, just a reminder, because it's so ubiquitous and it's so in our face. We're almost, what's the cliche? We miss the forest for the trees.
Right.
The Biden administration, the FBI, the Department of Justice, colluded with corporations, big tech, to shut people down and shut people up who offered correct, science-based, contrarian information during the COVID crisis. And again, and we see this. This isn't threats. There are people going to jail,
right?
Whether it's the J6 folks who trespassed, or you want to ping on this, or the abortion protesters who have been convicted of
A pro-choice activist can stand in front of a pro-life activist 12-year-old son, scream in his face, threaten him, essentially, make us concerned. And when the father steps in to protect his son, the father is the one who's going to go to jail, not only go to jail, but get his house raided by federal government officials armed to the teeth. This is where we are in 2020.
Andrew, I'm going to say something that's anecdotal and personal, but I remember being a kid, I don't know, 13, 14, outside shooting hoops with my dad. And he had come home from work. He worked for the Transit Authority. He smelled like oil and grease and steel because he worked on the tracks all day. You miss
that smell.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So he's wearing his dungarees, and his steel-booted steel-toed boots. Boots and a white T-shirt, stained with black oil, and we're shooting baskets. And at the time it was the 80s, and there was lots of talk about the evil empire and Gorbachev. It was before tear down this wall.
Yeah.
And my dad and I got into this conversation about Russia, the Soviets, America, and my dad said, "Kid," he goes, "Kid, they'll never take us." He said, "There's too many of us who are armed, and they won't get us." He says, "Our problem is it's going to come from within."
Yeah.
And and shoot a basket. And then we went on and talked about the Yankees or whatever else. But here's the thing: my father was right.
Yep.
There has been an ongoing revolution, and to a certain extent, it's been hidden. It's been in the universities. It's been in the corporate boardrooms, the cocktail circuit around D.C. or New York, the salon dinners. These elites have Hollywood, but now it's in our face. And here's the thing, and folks have written about this. We have been conditioned in the public schools, in the universities, to comply, and COVID might have been their first test.
I don't think it was their first test. I think it was the latest test.
Okay, well, let me say something, Chief,
please,
because I started to talk a little bit about this on the air at WBAL on Sunday. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. Wow. Now, there are a lot of theologians who believe that this mark of the beast is going to be some kind of chip, some kind of technology put into our wrist or hand or in our forehead. Nonsense. And I've been, and I taught theology, again, granted at the high school level of religious education, but I've been studying scriptures forever. It's not going to be a chip. It's not going to be a technology. All these buffoons who said that the COVID vaccine had technology in it, it's the mark of the beast. Nonsense, silliness. It's not right. But in the scriptures, the right hand means wisdom, means reasoning.
Yeah.
And the right hand, the right hand was a place of honor, respect, and wisdom. It's your mind.
Yeah.
It's what you will accept as right and wrong. And so, again, for my Christian friends, this idea of the mark of the beast isn't going to be this thing you see in the movies. It's going to be very subtle. It's going to happen over time, and all of us are going to comply, because in order to get a license to be an attorney, you're going to have to come from a certain kind of law school. In order to practice law, in order to be in the military, you're going to have to follow the DEI mandates. If you want to be a corporate officer, you want to be on a board of directors, you're going to have to comply with a certain kind of ideology. If you want to make it in Hollywood, you're going to have to comply. So it's happening all around us already.
Let me take us a step in a different direction too on this, which is that Nikita Khrushchev gave a famous speech in which it was reported that he said, "We will bury you." That's not what Nikita Khrushchev said.
Right.
Nikita Khrushchev said, "We will be at your funeral." And what Nikita Khrushchev meant by that was that the Soviet Union was going to use whatever was within their power to destroy Western civilization from within, to use the institutions of Western civilization to achieve their ends. And it's things like fomenting radical dissent in the 1960s. It is infiltrating our educational system. It is creating a situation in which the various factions, Jerry and I spend a lot of time talking about factions, push against one another. It is the slow erosion of this reason, given these institutions that we have. And that's what we're seeing. Right. And now, hold on, Jerry, because I want to give you a prime example of this, about what Americans are willing to take and how we get things turned on their head. And again, using a pro-life example. You all know I've taken on this new job. It's part of what's complicated our podcast schedule. I'm now the director of the Center for Regulatory Freedom at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Coalition. And Jerry, I don't know if you and I have talked about this. I think I may have mentioned it to you. We may have chatted about this. But we discovered that there is an ongoing, I did talk to you about this, there's an ongoing rulemaking. It's open right now at the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. At the end of 2022, Congress passed something called the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Not the Pregnant Women's Fairness Act, but the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And in that, it was a law designed to protect the rights of women who were pregnant, right, from being discriminated against in the workplace. And that it also protected women who had these pregnancy-related medical conditions, things like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, et cetera, things that happen to women when they're pregnant. Well, now the Biden administration wants to extend the protections of the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act to women who have terminated their pregnancies via abortion, which to me is the most and they want to define abortion as a related medical condition. There is something certainly diabolical in that. And that is the end result, again, of 60 plus years of the erosion of rationality and the erosion of the rational approach to public policy, where we're going to turn things on their head and say, okay, a woman who kills her baby through an abortion is going to be protected by the same law that is supposed to protect pregnant women, pregnant workers. That is insane. By the way, you can comment on that. Visit cpac.org. You'll find the Center for Regulatory Freedom. But this is what you're talking about here, right? Yeah. I mean, this is what we're saying.
Right. And again, the Brave New World, this dystopian future, there are competing books, they not quite the same time, but around the same time, right? You had Orwell's 1984,
sure,
and Huxley,
Aldous Huxley,
Brave New World. And if you look at the two books, the 1984, there really was this corporatist state that gobbled up freedom and controlled people's lives. You were forced to comply, etc. Everyone knows 1984. Brave New World's lesser known,
sure,
in terms of we don't quote it as much and we don't cite it as much as we do 1984. But the tyranny in a Brave New World wasn't the state as such. It was distraction. It was right. Folks were distracted by the pleasures and the myriad distractions of life.
Sure.
Look at us today. You and I talk to people on an individual basis, and I talk to people.
I talk to Barzini. Sorry, go ahead.
But through my work, I talk to public policy experts and media experts, both left and right. And when you talk to people on an individual level, most are reasonable and moderate. Most, they're center right, center left, even on the most controversial issues like abortion. Most people settle on, after the child feels pain or there's a heartbeat, the government should come in, the state has a compelling interest to regulate. When you talk to people on an individual basis. However, because our political fights have become religious fights, and most people don't have time to engage in the religiosity. What I mean by this is this. I'm again being long-winded again. We're distracted, Andrew.
Right.
Today, right? My wife and I got up around 5:45. I was already at the computer terminal at about 6:15. I'm editing, I'm writing. At the same time, my wife is getting ready for Bible study. The kids are getting ready to school. I drive my kids to Marriott Nazareth and Erica drives Maddie up to her school up in Frederick County. And the fact of the matter is, by 8 o'clock in the morning, we are dealing with literally hundreds of details about permission slips and family surveys and what's for dinner and who's going shopping. Oh, the engine light came on. Liam has a practice. Oh my goodness, the uniforms. Who's going to pick up the uniform? I mean, before 8, there's 1,000 things, hundreds of things that we're concerned about. And then this evening, there's homework and books and book coverings and all the rest of it, and life and bills. And my mom and dad are in South Carolina. My mom has COVID and my dad fell. And my goodness, Timothy, we are distracted. And then you have Hollywood.
Timothy's getting chased by a horse.
But then you have Hollywood. And again, again, not to sound prudish, I can't watch TV anymore because all the shows are like, I forget the name of it now, but it was this show on Netflix where all these high school kids are doing drugs and having threesomes. High school kids. And there's full frontal nudity. There's explicit sex scenes. Emma. Oh, she was in
Emma Roberts.
Yeah, she's now
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone is now doing this movie, and all again because I read all the
newspapers. Wait a minute, time out. I'm writing this down. Emma Stone is doing a movie in which she's nude. What is the movie?
Not only nude, but apparently extraordinary explicit sex scenes, full frontal nudity. My point is that we are so distracted by pornography of Hollywood, details of our days, taxes, bills, wages, that no one can pay attention to the fact that what's happening in the J6 trial is horrible. What's happening?
Hold on. Let's distill it back away, even away from the J6.
We are distracted,
Jerry. That's
how tyranny is coming in.
I have taken on this new job, right? And I've been in this new job now it'll be 2 months in another week. And we're dealing with regulation. I don't want to bore everybody with a lot of regulatory talk, but the point is that the executive branch has so much power that they can tinker around with all of these rules. And every time I turn around, Jerry, there's another rule that's popped up that we need to get involved in. And I don't have the manpower or the strength to sort of do all of these things. Like right now, we've got this abortion one at a EOC. We've got a water heater rule at EPA and Energy. We've got the new CAFE standards. The fuel economy standards are going to get rid of internal combustion engine cars. There's a rule about guns. And then there's a fifth one that I'm forgetting. Anyway, in my list here, there are 5 that were overtime. They're changing the overtime rules again. But I missed, because we're getting things ramped up, missed one about the electric fans. They want to change electric fans, stoves, washing machines. I got at the last minute a rule that's going to drive up the cost of childcare and get government more involved in childcare. Thank God I was able to dash off some comments on that.
But to your point, this is the government interfering in our lives, and we are too distracted and too busy.
Right. So we've got the big ticket stuff, people going to jail for their political beliefs, whether it's the J6 stuff or abortion. I saw, Jerry, I'm sorry, I'm going to digress again real quick. Because I don't know if I told you this. We were waiting in line for gas at Costco on Friday, me and Jan. And, gas lines are long because Costco gas is less expensive. And I get recommended a video from the Institute for Justice. And it is a body camera footage, Jerry, from a pull-off, a traffic stop in Nevada from 2021. Retired Marine is on his way to see his kids on the coast of California. They live there with their mother. And he's bringing he's going to see them, but he's also essentially bringing with him his life savings so that he can get things set up. He didn't want to bring a cashier's check, so he's carrying $89,000 worth of cash in his car. And he's going over a pass from Reno, Nevada into California, and he is following a truck below speed, but he's following the truck a little closely. The cop pulls him over, and the guy is like, he admits that, yeah, I've got all this cash in my car. And the cop, I guess his mouth salivates because of the civil asset forfeiture laws in the United States. And they know that they get 80% of whatever they get out of this guy's car. I'm watching this video. Janice is like, I can't watch this. She's having an anxiety attack. We can't watch. She's just freaking.
Why did the officer admit to having cash?
Why did the guy admit to having cash? because this gets into what we're talking about. People just want to live their lives, and so they want to be friendly to cops. So they're like, yeah, you know something? Listen, I'm driving to see my daughter, and the cop is engaging in, and this is the dastardly thing, the diabolical thing. He is being friendly. He's pretending to be friendly to ask this guy questions, to get this guy to admit something.
Right.
What he wants to do is he wants to be able to search this guy's car. And
listen, finish your story, but let me say this: I have a couple of good friends who are police officers and family members. I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who is a Montgomery County police officer, and he told me outright. He said, Jerry, he said, when you're pulled over, don't talk to the cops.
No.
He said, don't talk. Don't offer up anything. Say yes, sir, no, sir. Don't offer up anything you don't have. He says the only reason we pull you over is to arrest you.
Right. And that's the thing is
they don't pull you over because you're not wearing your seatbelt or because you have a tail light
following
out
too closely. That's exactly right. They want to be able to get you on something.
The only reason you are pulled over is to arrest you.
And so this guy is cooperative, and he is friendly. He is answering questions. Cop search his car, and the one cop says to the other cop, he calls a sergeant to come out to the traffic stop. He says, I think this guy is legit. I think he's honest. I think we should just let him go. And the sergeant says, well, we'll see about that. Now I'm going to get the dog to sniff on his dollar. And we know that between 70 and 100% of currency in America.
I just told this to we were having a conversation over dinner, and I told my kids, I'm like, do you realize that the American money supply is 100% corrupted with cocaine?
Yes. Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
And it contaminated to the point where any dog
exactly
can sniff it out. Yes,
that's exactly right. Which is why it can no longer be used in most jurisdictions or many jurisdictions as a signal of probable cause. So the sergeant pulls out
$89,000 in cash. You're going to smell a lot of cocaine.
It's exactly right. It's basically a bag of cocaine.
Yes.
And so the guy had his receipts, like he had all of his cash bundled with the ATM receipts from when he withdrew it from his bank. And the cop said, well, we're taking this cash. Here's your pink receipt. You can deal with the DEA about this, because they're the ones who are sort of in charge of this situation. And it took 2.5 years for him to get his money back.
And then, of course, deduct from that the 2-year fight to get it back.
And thankfully, he had free counsel. And that's the point that the Institute for Justice makes. My point in the end is this guy is an unsuspecting guy, Marine Corps guy, just trying to be cooperative, just trying to do the right thing. And he gets almost $90,000 taken off of him. And he had to go call his brother and say, hey, wire me some money. These cops just ran away with my $90,000. Janice couldn't watch it. I had to finish watching it yesterday, which is why it's on my mind. But this is the point that Jerry and I have talked about so many times. The Henry Silverglade 3 felonies a day theory.
Yeah.
We're in an America in which there are so many laws in the books, and the government interferes in your life, in your daily life in so many ways that anybody can get caught up in these.
And this is why I laugh in disbelief with my liberal friends, progressives who are like, well, if Donald Trump was innocent, why would there be 91 indictments? Why? Because the Department of Justice or a state's attorney can manipulate, can misapply the law. I did a whole tutorial on WBAL, my radio show on Sunday, talking about how the Fulton County, Georgia case, there is no underlying statute that's broken.
Right.
And everyone said, well, Jerry, it's RICO. I said, yes, you're right. He's being charged under RICO. But under RICO, even the Georgia
just the Georgia RICO. Yes, let's be really clear. Donald Trump would not have been charged under the federal RICO.
Well, he might have been given a prosecutor who wanted him. My point is that the alleged crime that he committed was trying to subvert an election outcome, trying to change an election outcome, which is not illegal.
Right.
It's not illegal.
Right.
Even if you do it by illegal means, it's not illegal.
But what happens
if you do it by illegal means, the illegal means are illegal. They can be prosecuted but it's not against the law. So
right. Let me be really clear about the elements of this. So, for instance, if you break into an election machine, if two people talk about breaking into an election machine and then go in and break into the election machine, the talking about breaking into the election machine, that's the RICO aspect of it. That's the conspiracy, the two people talking. But in Georgia, the law is so vaguely written that a prosecutor, all that prosecutor has to do is say that what they did was criminal. Therefore, all of these other things that they did further into the crime.
But it is worse than that, Andrew. What the prosecutor in Fulton County has said is that you can commit, you can violate the Georgia RICO standard even by engaging in legal activity.
Well, yes, but the legal activity that is around the furtherance of something that she says is illegal.
Right, but and that's the point.
Yeah.
There is no what Jenna Ellis did, what Rudy Giuliani did, what the other co-conspirators did, everything was legal.
Right.
They were attempting to overthrow the election outcome because they believed it to be rigged, right. Which is which you can disagree. And again, there's you punish if Trump is wrong and he lied about the election being rigged, then what you do is you don't elect him again. Right. That's the punishment. What the left has done here, and this is the danger, because if they can do it to Donald Trump, they can do it to anybody. What they're doing here is they are bringing what is essentially a political argument and they're making it criminal.
Right. Exactly.
And this is the dangerous introduction. This could be used for anyone now.
Exactly. And as I say this, it's the issue of let me go in a different direction here.
Sure.
Because I want to get your sense on this. Because again, the left wins. This is
they win all the time.
You're gonna have me be a little
all the time
Jerry-like and Eeyore-ish here. The left has won insofar as, regardless of the outcome, now the 2024 election is about whether or not Donald Trump is eligible to run, if he is eligible to run, whether or not he is eligible to serve as president, and then they will use this as an excuse to go after the Electoral College. If the Supreme Court is the one who ultimately decides that Donald Trump is eligible to run and eligible to serve, the left is going to use that as an avenue to attack the legitimacy of the Supreme Court.
And again, remember, there is a reason why the left is attacking the Supreme Court's legitimacy over the past 2 years. There's a reason why, even after disclosures, even when their theories have been proven incorrect, they're still going after the Supreme Court, because this has to do with delegitimizing and changing the nature of law in the court. Right. There's a reason why Again, it's so outrageous, Andrew.
I know.
Who's the guy in charge of the Federal Society? Leo.
Leonard Leo.
Leonard Leo is now being investigated by essentially the state's attorney, the prosecutor in Washington, D.C., because of his shadowy network of supporting conservative.
Essentially, Leonard Leo did exactly what the Arabella, Arabella Foundation, Arabella, in whatever Arabella is, this for-profit public affairs spider organization that it has its fingers and everything. Leonard Leo did the exact same thing. He went and he wound up founding or going in and becoming partners with our good friends at Creative Response Concepts and becoming, a partner at CRC Advisors. And there are donations that are going in, and CRC is an effective public affairs firm. All of this stuff that the left has done for years, they are replicating on the right, and yet it's Leonard Leo that is being investigated, because they essentially are criminalizing his protected political activity. Sorry, I stole your thunder.
No, but
I wasn't. By the way, I wasn't aware that Leonard Leo had become a partner at CRC Advisors. That was news.
But the bottom line is that the prosecutor in Washington, D.C., a leftist, is using the law, using the Justice Department, the law enforcement, to go after a political enemy.
Yes.
And if they're going to do it to Donald Trump or Leonard Leo or any number of others, those scientists who work on climate change and et cetera, again, what is the, first they came for the trade unionist, and I wasn't one, so I said nothing.
Right. It's the Niemöller prayer.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, this is it. Like, I'm not a conservative, so yeah, I mean, how many people on social media have applauded that essentially peacefully trespassing in the Capitol has resulted in people receiving 2 decades in prison?
Right.
People are saying, our old friend Brian Griffiths.
I saw this.
I tweeted out, that essentially the guy deserved it.
Yeah, but it was as Matt Welch from Reason, finally the good folks at Reason, back on the sort of the right side of things. Essentially Brian, saying his version of what I love to say: play stupid games, win stupid prizes. But Jerry, I mean, real quick, because we're running down on
out of time. Yeah.
I'm thinking Donald Trump is knocked off the ballot in New Hampshire, probably California, probably New York, maybe Wisconsin. It goes to federal district court. The federal district courts in those states uphold them. The appellate courts get mixed results. The Supreme Court finds in favor of Donald Trump. Am I wrong here? I mean,
you're correct, but again, but we have to say this, and that is that it is a gross, disgusting misunderstanding and misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment to use it to keep your political enemy, i.e., Donald Trump, off of ballot. So you're right. If it plays out, that's how it will play out. However, I have a different idea in this area, and that is, I hope that Donald Trump's going to realize at some point that he can't. I know that he cannot fight these legal battles and run for president.
Donald Trump is a dark version of Obi-Wan Kenobi. You strike him down, it only makes him more powerful. Donald Trump, then
if Donald Trump,
and by the way, and I know we've said this before, but I feel like I need to say it for a first-time viewer, first-time listener. The left wants Donald Trump on the ballot.
Yes,
they want him on the ballot,
which is why they're going after him.
Absolutely, because they know the more popular he is, because again, they get everything they want out of him being on the ballot. If he loses, great, then Biden gets elected to another term. If he wins, they can delegitimize, they can go after the Supreme Court, they can go after him. They win either way. They've engineered this. They want to make the 2024 election about Donald Trump's eligibility to run, and not these other things. I had a subsidiary question to this, Jerry. Donald Trump, Joe Biden. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. So, and of course, the wild card in all of this is Jerry's favorite governor. Jerry was all about him. He was an erstwhile supporter. He was right there next to him both times he was inaugurated. Your favorite governor of all time, Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan's still making rumblings. That's the wild card here. And what I love is Rick Wilson turning around and saying, "Oh, no. This is a sham effort. They got, Republicans are involved, or, something they may very well be. They may very well be encouraging Larry Hogan to run and not win, because Larry Hogan can't win."
Well,
that's the wild card.
Well, again, just a couple of things. I know we're short on time. We got to go, but here a couple of things. Number one, hopefully, again, the Republican electorate will realize, if Trump doesn't, the fact that Trump doesn't step down for the greater good shows that he is again unqualified to be president again. And again, there's lots of reasons why Trump is disqualified himself. How he behaved after his legal run-throughs in terms of questioning the election. He was right to question the election, but at some point you have to say, game over, let's get ready for the next game. He never did that. He blew it in Georgia. We lost 2 Senate seats there. He blew it in the midterms in 2022. We could have had a red wave. Instead, we did not. I blame Donald Trump for that. On top of that, he gave us the COVID regime. He gave us the lockdowns, the mandates. He gave us Fauci and Birx and all the rest of it. Again, and he promised to do things that he never accomplished. And I know it's hard to do, but the fact of the matter is, if it was hard to do then, drain the swamp. What makes anyone think he'll do it a second time if he couldn't do it the first time?
Well, and keeping in mind that the folks who got him elected in 2016 and helped him have a great first couple of years of his first term, those folks are nowhere to be seen. Jerry, you're on Sunday again?
I'm on Sunday, and maybe I'll, I want to talk on Sunday, just real quick, because I think it's interesting. There was this 15 wackadoos down Disney World.
Oh, Disney World.
And they, the neo-Nazis, and it got the press, every press outlet, everyone's talking about it. And I'm saying to myself, why does the media give these cranks, these idiots, 15 people so much fame and legitimacy?
It helps their narrative.
Because it helps their narrative. So we're going to talk about that. And on top of that, what we talked about here.
That's the question, Jerry. Where is their money coming from? And is any of it foreign cryptocurrency? Because I guarantee that it is.
But the bottom, Andrew, your last couple of statements here on today's program, the left has accused the right of smashing norms of a constitutional crisis, the abuse of power, mob rule, insurrection, and this is exactly what the left is doing.
Right.
But unfortunately, we're too distracted to realize it.
Jerry, listen, we will leave it there. He is Jerry Rogers. He is on Sundays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. He's got the new podcast.
You gotta find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm.
I was gonna leave you with that. You can check out my podcast, my other podcast, the Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. This week, by the way, you got to check out the most recent episodes. This week is Jerry. We got to do a show next week for September 11th. We need to talk about this. This week is Philip Howard, the author of The Death of Common Sense. Last week was E. Donald Elliott, former deputy administrator of the EPA. Next Monday, Jerry, on September 11th, I've got a special show featuring Ken Millman, former White House political director. He's going to tell his story of where he was on September 11th, what happened then. So go and check out Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. I'm Andrew Langer. Have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.